Well, hello, everyone. I'll give everyone a moment to settle in. My name is Sue Orton. I'm your room host. I work in the Office of Alumni Affairs and Development. And a warm welcome to everyone, because it's an awfully cold day here in Poughkeepsie. To the second career cluster. This one is about law and legal services. So thank you for joining us. We very much appreciate you being here. And we really appreciate our mentors for the time and effort and expertise and wisdom they're bringing to this discussion today. I have a few housekeeping things to go over, and then we will start, we'll plunge right in, as they say. So hold on a minute, we've got some notes, and let me look at these notes. Okay, so this session will run until 4:35. And at that point, we will do breakouts, and that will allow everyone about 20 minutes to have, what we used to call hallway conversations after these sessions occur, when they usually occur on campus. This gives you a chance to think about things you might want to ask that you didn't have a chance to do, or a follow-up question. But I do want to emphasize that when our panelists, our mentors are finished talking about their background and expertise and the great advice they offer, please ask questions of them, and Lauren will lead the way. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a chat function. Hope you can see that icon. And so when Lauren raises that, you're welcome to put questions in there, or you're also welcome to raise your hand. And that's when to do that. And you probably all know this. I'm sorry if I'm repeating things you already know, but for those who don't, you go to the icon or the little tab that says reactions, and you click on it, and you'll see you can literally raise your hand. And again, let Lauren guide you about when that's something she'll request of all of you. Finally, before we go into the breakout rooms, and I will let everyone know when that time is here, I'll remind everyone that you can move around. So I set them up, but they're automatically, everyone just is set up into rooms. I don't assign you to rooms, it's done automatically. So you may land in a room and say, oh goodness, I'm hoping to speak to somebody else, in which case you'll say, sorry, I'm gonna leave for the other, to attend another room, and you just leave and use your time wisely in that way. The last thing is, it was asked at me by one of our mentors about whether there's an opportunity for all of the students to ask more questions if you find you just didn't have the time to do so. And there is time tomorrow. So remember to go to the Vassar website, and in the search bar, pull up the Sophomore Career Connections, and you'll see there the schedule, the wonderful bios on the faculty and the mentors, and any other things that guidelines about this past week. But I believe tomorrow, I think between 1 and 2:30, I don't have the website open at the moment, but I believe there's time for you to sort of get together with everyone again. So do check that out. Okay, so with that, I am very pleased to introduce you to Lauren Robinson, who serves as our lead mentor in today's session, and enjoy this wonderful chance to hear from these brilliant alums about their careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start by asking each of our mentors to just briefly introduce themselves, what they're doing now, their title, and their role. And I'd like to start with Achal.
Hey guys, my name is Achal, class of 2019. I was a political science and biology double major at Vassar. And now I'm a paralegal at the Federal Defenders of New York, out of the Southern District of New York. So, right now what I'm doing is I draft a lot of bail packages, put bail packages together, doing a lot of mitigation writing. So like deferred prosecutions and that kind of stuff. And then I also get to sit on a lot of trials and hearings and help prepare for those. So that's kind of what I've been up to since I graduated.
Excellent. Thank you, Achal. Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. I was a mathematics and psychology double major at Vassar, mostly because I didn't want to write long papers. And I am currently a staff attorney at the Department of Police Accountability in San Francisco. So we help craft policy and department general orders for the San Francisco Police Department. We also bring cases where we have found misconduct, but we investigate any complaint that comes our way. We also respond to any and all officer-involved shootings. So we take turns being on call. I just got off call on Friday, and I'm glad I didn't have to respond to any 2 a.m. phone calls. I went straight into law school from Vassar, became a public defender for 13 years, went into private practice at a law firm, which I found was not for me, opened my own firm, did that for about 4 years, and then came back to San Francisco government work with my new agency.
Thank you, Stephanie. Natalie?
My name is Natalie Limon, class of 2015. I majored in Hispanic studies. I also had a correlate in sustainability. And my current title is lead paralegal at Church World Service, the Immigration Legal Services Department in the New York office. I've previously been partially accredited by the Department of Justice that allows non-lawyers to practice law and represent clients as if they were attorneys before, outside of immigration courts, but before United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, CBP and ICE. And then there is also opportunity to become fully accredited and practice in immigration court as well, which I've been working towards via, I just completed an advanced certificate out of the CUNY Graduate Center's School of Professional Studies. And after some court observation and other things, that would also allow someone in my position to practice before the courts. So I deal in direct legal services, mainly in the nonprofit world, but I've also been in private practice as well at a small firm. And can talk a little bit about like the non-lawyer track and career opportunities there.
Excellent. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Weiner, class of 91, parent 23. I have a son who lives in Jewett this year. And I am a managing director, senior deputy general counsel at Citadel, which is a global financial services firm, headquarters in Chicago. Prior to that, I have been an in-house lawyer at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I worked at a law firm. In addition to my law degree, I have an MBA in finance from Northwestern, and my current job has coverage in my organization globally for matters related to employment, real estate, intellectual property, strategic transactions, litigation, internal investigations, and any other random stuff that pops up. Crisis management is one that's happening now. So that's me. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lauren Robinson, class of 86. I majored in English at Vassar, originally from Queens, New York, and I've been in Chicago for 25 years now. I'm the Assistant General Counsel at the American Medical Association. So I provide legal, business, strategic, operational advice to staff and senior management. I work in the areas of employment law, corporate transactions, corporate governance, internal investigations, and again, whatever they tell me to do. Like I said, I majored in English, and I'll talk about this a little bit further, but I worked for several years and then went to law school. So what I'd like to get into now, and I'd like Natalie to kick us off. Natalie, please share with us, what drew you to the work, what do you like about it, the opportunities, the challenges, and how Vassar played a role, the skills that Vassar gave you, and maybe, things you would have done differently at Vassar or skills that Vassar didn't quite give you. If you can share that.
Sure. My Vassar education really instilled in me the desire to serve others, particularly people in marginalized communities, wanting to commit myself to a career in service in some way. I did Hispanic studies. It was really passionate about really learning the Spanish language and becoming really fluent in it. That was partially personally inspired. My paternal grandfather is Mexican, and I wanted to learn his language and just engage in that aspect of my heritage that we hadn't really done so much growing up. So that's why I was studying Spanish at Vassar. And then having been, really inspired to engage in service to others in some way, I was doing different internships and fellowships during the summers, and ended up in doing some immigration legal services, doing a bunch of citizenship applications. That coincided with the political climate changing. That was the summer of 2014, where there was a surge of unaccompanied migrant children. There was a lot of rhetoric at that time. And so I was really inspired to stay in that field because I felt like I was learning skills that were really needed, and that I could grow my knowledge and just be of use and service there. And then being in that nonprofit internship, I learned about the accreditation opportunity. It used to be called something different, but basically it's not a license, because you can take a license from job to job. You have to be an employee of a nonprofit organization that's recognized by immigration agencies, and then they can apply on your behalf. You submit a portfolio showing you've studied immigration law, you've done trainings, so on and so forth. And then you get this status that allows you to practice as if you were an attorney. But when you change organizations, you lose it and have to get it all over again. So I'm happy to speak about that, the limitations and what's cool about it, but it's very fulfilling work. Vassar totally prepared me for this career in like writing and analysis and advocacy. I don't feel like I really practiced. So I've discussed how I don't want to be a lawyer for a lot of reasons, and we can discuss some of what those are. But for me, I'm passionate about helping people navigate the law. I'm not passionate really about the law itself, or like the storied and special, all the things that some people aspire or excited about being an attorney. I don't really care about any of that. I just want to help people navigate a system. Part of what keeps me out of court and things like that is I really don't like confrontation. I don't like the ego, the hostility. I don't even like going through court security. There's just so much attitude, so much personality everywhere, and Vassar didn't prepare me for any of that. And I don't know how it would, but it would have definitely been out of the classroom in some way, and different experiences or things I might have maybe been able to try, like to prepare me for all of the personality that's in the work world, I think in any industry, but there is definitely like the legal world has its own kind of thing and hierarchy and all of that, that my experience, my education did not prepare me for. So sorry if that was a long-winded answer.
Thank you, Natalie. Michael?
I believe that Vassar prepared me very well for my career. And it prepared me both as a good writer, a good reader, and it gave me a number of opportunities to develop my leadership skills. And sorry, I just ran up the stairs. I think that in the long run in one's career, having those leadership experiences and leadership skills to be able to kind of take ownership of projects and problems and solve those problems and projects, feel comfortable taking that responsibility, is what makes a lot of difference. And I think Vassar gives you a lot of opportunities to do that.
Okay. Stephanie?
Thank you. So I would say that my writing skills were not honed at Vassar. I think by virtue of being a Vassar student, it already means you're smart, you're capable, all of those things. Like anything else with skills, you have to hone them. And because I didn't do sort of a lot of the traditional writing, I will say Vassar prepared me extremely well for making linear, logical, compelling arguments. And that was part my mathematics degree, right? You spend 4 years writing proofs. It's not that different from writing legal arguments. My other major was psychology because I knew that I wanted to work in the criminal courts. And as I'm sure you're probably aware, the vast majority of the criminally accused suffer from mental health disorders, addiction, and understanding what that means to have a client come in with a particular diagnosis, for example, and being able to really understand what that symptomology looks like was extremely helpful to me and how to relate to my clients and how to speak intelligently about their challenges and how the system could help them rather than just lock people up. So Vassar prepared me extremely well for that. Also, the network and the community of people. A lot of people, as you know, do a year abroad. Right now it's COVID. I did a semester in DC and I got to intern at the public defender there, and that was amazing. And as a college student, you intern as an investigator. So we got to go out into the community and interview witnesses and kind of really see the sort of boots on the ground piece of making a case, which was incredibly helpful. So it certainly, it also, the rigorous studies prepared me for law school. I was the first in my family to go to law school. There were no lawyers. My sister and I were the first to ever go to college. So I will say, if it's something you aspire to, don't be afraid of it. There are a lot of mentors out there who are willing to help and talk you through it and be there when it is tough and when it is challenging.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and I'm going to ask the same follow-up to Michael so that our students can understand a little bit more. So tell us what drew you to the work, what's the appeal of it, the drawbacks and the challenges of your work.
Okay, so I think it's a multi-pronged answer. So in terms of kind of what drew me to going to law school in the first place versus what drew me to my current job and what I find satisfying about my current job. So in terms of going to law school, I was a history major at Vassar, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that. I tried to be a teacher, and I actually moved to Argentina for a year after college and worked at a school as a middle school social studies teacher. But I quickly realized that that was not the right career for me. My interacting with eighth graders is less than positive experience. So I came back to the US and went to law school because it seemed like at the time the most rational thing for me to do, and which I would point out, and I think a lot of my co-panelists will agree, is exactly the wrong reason to go to law school. But nonetheless, it worked out okay for me. I had a kind of interesting career where it took a lot of turns. I started at a law firm, then I went in-house, then I worked for a couple of different internet companies before kind of ending up where I am now, which is at this global financial services firm / hedge fund. The thing that I love about my current job, which is something that I hated about my first job, working for a law firm, I did one thing over and over again every day. And I didn't do it for long. I did it for about 6 months before I realized it was not going to be what I wanted to do with my life. My current job is, the thing that I love about it is I do something different every day. So you could hear from my original kind of introduction, I have a lot of different responsibilities and in a lot of different areas of the law. And so I get to learn a lot of things. So I've been practicing law for 25 years, and I still am learning lots of things every day because I get new issues and my company's very dynamic. We're always in new jurisdictions. We may be opening an office in Singapore tomorrow. And so I have to learn all about the law in Singapore. And so I really love that kind of diversity of issues that I get to attack in my job every day and that I get to learn. The other great thing is that because I work at a global financial services firm, I get to work with outside lawyers, lawyers at law firms who are experts in particular areas that are the experts in their field. And I get to learn again from these people who are just the absolute top of their field every day. And I get to build relationships with those people, and I get to learn a lot from them. So those are some things I love about my job.
Thank you, Michael. Stephanie?
So I'm one of those rare people that did know before I went to college that I wanted to be a lawyer. For me, it was in high school. I was very wild, and I hung out with a lot of other wild people. But the only people going to jail were pretty much the males and pretty much the Black and brown males. Then I had a friend whose brother was addicted to methamphetamine, and he went out and committed some offenses. He was only 17, and he was assigned a public defender, and the family, just by virtue of having a public defender, had this perception that that attorney was not as good. They took a second mortgage on their home and hired a private attorney who promptly sent their 17-year-old son to prison for many, many, many years and did not communicate with the family. That, for me, led me directly to my 13 years as a public defender. I felt blessed to have the opportunity to go to a school like Vassar, and I ended up at UCLA Law. And I just thought that what better way to serve marginalized communities than to take that, what they call fancy education, that pedigree education, and put it to work in indigent defense. And it was amazing. And you know, for me, getting to work one-on-one with clients and their families was amazing. And it was a great pull. At some point for me, the stress of trial work, especially felony trial work, because as a public defender, the reward for doing well is more work and harder cases, right? So you get to the point where almost everybody is looking at life in prison, and it can really kind of grind on you after a while. So that led me to leave that and go into private practice for a while. And now being in police reform, it's not the same kind of connectedness with an individual client, but you feel like you're making an impact on a larger scale. So one of the things to think about is all the different ways that you can be of service, either broadly, on a micro scale, you know, serving individual clients like Natalie does in immigration court. You change lives. One of the benefits of being maybe at a big firm is sometimes they have money for good pro bono. So while I was doing plaintiffs' mesothelioma work, we were representing people who were literally dying of cancer. Happened to be that same period of time, Natalie, you triggered my memory of when we had the wave of undocumented, unaccompanied minors. And our firm paired with a nonprofit, and we got to do at least 15 of those cases. And we were highly successful in getting those minors to be able to stay. And so for me, that was the draw, is the helping people, making difference in lives. And now with the current climate, really being in a position to where people are listening about police reform and interested in seeing it. The last thing I'll say is I'm in San Francisco, so we sort of have, I don't know how much this hit the news out there, but literally half of my former office, all the public defenders are all now prosecutors, because a public defender whose parents, one of whom is still doing prison time from when he was a toddler, is now the district attorney, the head prosecutor for San Francisco. And so they are now creating one of the biggest police reforms that people have been pushing for, defunding the police, which really means having professionals who are more capable than police officers responding to certain situations. And we now have teams that include mental health and social workers to respond to certain types of calls, to try, especially to get rid of those lethal calls for the mental health crises.
Stephanie, thank you so much. Ashwell?
Yeah, so I think my bachelor education was like really important in what I find myself doing now and what I want to kind of do in the future. So, I took a lot of great political science courses with like Tanisha Means, a lot of amazing English classes with like Tyrone Simpson. And it really changed the way I thought about our legal system or the lack of a fair legal system. And so I was really like brought to like abolition politics by them. I see myself as like a prison abolitionist. And so as I kind of thought about what I wanted to do, I wondered like how I could work with those kind of politics in this current legal system. And I think they inspired me to like work at the Federal Defenders, because at the Federal Defenders, I'm able to kind of practice and help attorneys practice a kind of like radical public defense is what they call it. And where we like holistically represent our clients. We try to not only deal with, the contradictions they're dealing with in the legal system, but also make sure they're getting health care, make sure that they're getting equal access to education. So, I think it can often, like, I struggle with thinking about how to work within a system that is so inherently unjust. But I think, and I guess that's something I'm still trying to think about, but I think I can maybe do it through using the law.
Great, thank you. So for me, it was a circuitous path to the law. Unlike many Vassar students and liberal arts students, I didn't go right into law school, or going back to school was the furthest thing from my mind. I just wanted to graduate. And so I graduated. I actually worked in banking in New York City for a few years. And I was in an industry that was consolidating at the time, and people were losing jobs. And I thought, maybe this law thing is a good idea, because maybe it's a way that I could do well and do good, and also a way that I could, create my own job for myself if I had to. So went to law school. I also have a master's in public policy. I worked at a large law firm in Chicago. I made it to partnership, and realized that the prize of partnership was like winning the pie eating contest, and the prize was more pie, and I was kind of sick of pie. And so I left, and then I worked at a small nonprofit doing community economic development work. Actually, we were trying to actually raise a private equity fund for community development, because we were just trying to do something more creative in the space. The very low wages in that nonprofit environment was not sustainable for me. So I looked for an opportunity where I could do something socially meaningful with the law. And so then I went to the American Bar Association, a large nonprofit where, again, I'm using my legal skills, but in a way that's socially relevant from my perspective. And now, fast forward, I'm with the American Medical Association again, as I view it, using my powers for good. I majored in English at Vassar. Vassar gives you a top-notch education. I think the writing skills, I think the analytical skills, really being able to see a situation for what it is versus just accepting someone else's presentation of something, really able to see the truth or the layers or the nuances in matters. I think one of the most important skills is being able to learn, being able to teach yourself. I mean, to Michael's point, they're looking to open an office in Singapore. He's basically going to teach himself, what the implications of that are. That's what a Vassar education does for you. I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about like current relevancies. Right now we're in COVID-19. We're also dealing with Black Lives Matter and the movement for justice and equity. Michael, can you share with us how those events are impacting your work?
Yeah, I'll focus more on the Black Lives Matter and equity piece, because I think everybody is kind of similarly impacted by COVID. my organization has a long history of styling itself as what it calls a pure meritocracy. So for many years, really up until very recently, we the position that we are completely and absolutely colorblind and gender blind and nationality blind and every other protected class as we hire people. The business that we're in, people are successful or fail because of the very slimmest margins, which in the world of finance is referred to as alpha. And so we always took the position that, you know, we're just going to basically move everything related to race, gender, national origin to one side and just find the best people no matter what. And this summer, that changed. And we really realized that although we had a somewhat diverse workforce, it was much more diverse in some respects than others. And we have made a conscious and deliberate push to build a diversity and inclusion component into our recruiting. And some of that includes things like, you know, we had never recruited at historically Black colleges before. And now we do. And we are, you know, we're looking for the absolute best students at every school that we recruit from. That very top computer science, math student that we can find at that school. And we can find that student at Morehouse or at Howard or at Spelman. And, you know, it's better for us to do that. And so that's one of the things we're doing. It's just one small component of our overall D&I strategy, but it is very interesting to see an organization like the one I work for really shift and change in response to these events.
Thank you, Michael. Natalie?
So as it pertains to COVID, I'll piggyback off of some of Charles' comments in the last session when he was discussing building rapport with clients and how that can be very difficult to do not face-to-face, particularly when your client base is are groups of people who have been systemically like marginalized or oppressed by institutions, and then other legal institutions or legal actors. Maybe they've been in my industry, maybe they've been the victim of fraud or just had bad experiences with people that have represented them in the past. So it's harder to build rapport over the phone. And then I'll just add to that sometimes that becomes even more difficult because of caseloads and quotas. So I work in the nonprofit sector. There are, in order to have certain grants, sometimes you have to like realize a certain number of intakes or cases in a year and things like that. And it can make it, you want to spend time with each person. You want to really be a human. You want to give them their time, but you also have to do so many consultations and this, that, and the other. And so I think COVID makes it even harder to take advantage of the, you know, small amount of time you have to build a relationship, because it's you know, you get good at not having that much time, but building relationships when it's face to face. And some of the things, you know, for relationship building are just not there. And then even another thing is, you know, all of my doctor's appointments, so on and so forth, since this all started happening, have been Zoom, you know, or at least there's some modicum of face-to-face interaction. A lot of the immigrant community doesn't necessarily have the same familiarity with this type of video conferencing. Like cell phones are a thing, but, you know, it just depends, you know, what apps does your organization let you use, so on and so forth. Like, what is your, literally, what system do you guys have a subscription for? And is that a system that your clients use? Because like my clients would certainly use a lot of WhatsApp video messaging, but it depends on whether your organization's going to allow you to use that. So things like that. But by and large, we've still been able to get the work done. But I think it's a little bit less fulfilling not seeing your clients. and it's not as fair to them to not see you in person. COVID has obviously slowed down the government, and messed up people's processes in some ways. And then I'll just mention with the Black Lives Matter portion and all of the unrest and organizing and protesting, everything that was going on. It really depends what organization you're in, like in the nonprofit sector for me, how much you get to engage with that. So again, like I was telling you guys that we have these quotas. There might be like an advocacy branch of the organization, but whether or not I'm permitted to participate in it depends on my role and what the expectations are. I was part of a fellowship before, not too long ago, that gave us all training, placed us in different sites. I know that they're trying to carve out more room in that fellowship program now for students to engage in advocacy and amongst things that are happening and things like that, because there really wasn't room in the fellowship. So when you work at a nonprofit, like the top management, they'll put out a statement on like what happened last week, with George Floyd or something like that. There might be some breakout clusters to discuss your feelings about it or discuss things like that. Like they'll do things, but whether or not you really get to engage, it depends on your organization, how much they're committed to advocacy and how much time they allow you to be engaged in that. So I just wanted to bring that up because, that is something that I've heard peers kind of, some not totally complain, but they say, gee, I wish we had more time to do this, or I wish we as an organization discussed these issues more, so on and so forth. Like it is a thing, and it depends how much your organization is going to dedicate time to it.
Thank you, Natalie. Very, very good points. So students, I'm going to ask Ashel and Stephanie to also opine on this, but just to let you know, when we finish answering this question, we're going to be ready to take your questions, which you can raise your hand, or you can also put questions in the chat. Ashel?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with COVID and then go to kind of the Black Lives Matter movements a little bit. So when COVID first hit, one of the things that we had to kind of deal with and crisis manage was that COVID ran like a wildfire through the federal jail system. And so we had a lot of clients who got sick. Unfortunately, some who passed away. But so we were doing bail motions around the clock, basically, just trying to get them out in some capacity, just because it was impossible to social distance or do any of that kind of stuff inside a jail. So that was the majority of our work, was just trying to get our clients out of jail. Recently, that's shifted a little bit. Like one thing that we found in some research that we did at the Federal Defenders was that a lot of our clients, now that they're finally being offered the vaccine, are actually refusing it because of the distrust that marginalized communities have in our system of healthcare. And that's been something we've been struggling with, because it's not easy to reverse 400 years of history where Black and brown people have been taken advantage of when it comes to vaccines and stuff like that. So that's something we're working on right now. As for I think our organization did some good stuff after the murders of like Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. We started a strategic litigation committee. And I got to work on this pretty interesting project where we started doing some research on jury wheels and how, so a lot of our arrests happen in communities like the Bronx where the majority of people are Black and brown, but the juries are picked from like lower Manhattan, zip codes in lower Manhattan, which are predominantly, higher income white people. And so trying to combat some of those inequalities has been impressive. And then I think the final thing I'll say is we've tried to kind of make our office a anti-racist space, which is not easy to do, I think, in this climate. I like to say that my office is full of white liberals who are sometimes not so, have a hard time committing to actually acting in practices that are anti-racist. So thinking about that in our own office space and trying to reflect that in our work has been something we've been trying to do over the last couple of months.
Thank you. Stephanie?
So I will also start with COVID. I have been at home since March. I have been to the office 3 times, but our trials are in person. So that can be a challenge. If you're not giving yourself a headache, you're not screaming loud enough, because there's a court reporter who's all the way on the other side of the room while you're trying to ask questions and be heard through your mask. We've made it work. For us, the biggest issue was California has the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, which means generally that our investigations have to be completed within 1 year. And a big part of that is interviewing officers. Officers have to be interviewed. They don't have a choice. They get in bigger trouble if they try to tell us no. However, when COVID first hit and we shut down, it was 3 weeks. So everybody we'll just put them off for 3 weeks, and then it extended and extended and extended. And then we had officers who insisted on coming in person, and we were, 4 deep in a very small room, and we were masked, and we tried to be as far apart as possible. But COVID actually, in addition to running rampant through the jail system, really ran through the police department as well. I know New York saw this too, but San Francisco did as well. So we had to go to court about it. But after litigation, we were able to at least give the option to where we could move ahead with our investigations, interview people, but we could do it in an electronic format. Sometimes that's very difficult because we need to show body worn camera and all that. So we had to learn real fast how to share your screen and work audio. But we did it, we made it work. The other thing, of course, is that I'm the parent of a teenager with ADHD. So on top of working full time and trying to not blow any of my deadlines and make all my meetings, I have to sort of micromanage his schedule. Like, he's extremely intelligent, but it's don't get off the video game. You have to be present. Is your video on? Your teacher's talking to you. Those types of things have been a little bit of a challenge. However, for him, he is loving this and wants to do college from home. So, the upside is also a much shorter commute. And in terms of Black Lives Matter, that movement has been near and dear to my heart since it first started. My ex-husband is Jamaican, my son is Black, and I have that fear every time he walks out the door. He's 14 years old, he's 6'1". He does not look like a 14-year-old, but he is very much a kid. And if I could never, ever let him leave the house, I would feel much safer for it. But our agency is run by a Black man who's also gay. We have an extremely diverse staff. We're in San Francisco. The chief of police is not only a Black man, he has a disabled adult son. So we get to have a lot of discussions about being anti-racist, a lot of discussions about inclusion and ableism and all of those things. We just had a huge push to get a deaf and hard of hearing Department General Order pushed through because the police were not properly dealing with folks who were deaf and hard of hearing. And it was leading to instances of excessive force and those types of things. So what the murder of George Floyd did is really ignite the entire country and get ears open so that now that the work we're doing, people are listening and we're able to get things done faster. The police commission in San Francisco was actually able to get the police department to not only acknowledge Black Lives Matter, but to create permanent posters, fixtures that are in every single police station, right? So we push for the gay safe space signage to be up at the police stations, but now they also have the Black Lives Matter at every police station. And had them make videos, have individual officers make videos about this so that there could at least to start be this conversation about if we're going to have police, right? Because some people want to abolish the police. I'm like Achel, if I can work myself out of a job, awesome, I'm happy for it. Or to at least change the entire conversation and the way that policing is done and the way that we deal with over-policing in Black and Brown communities. So this movement has really sort of opened up the conversation and allowed us to really push the agenda and have people really hear it.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to start taking some questions from the chat. So actually, Stephanie, I'm going to pose this question to you. How do you cope with compassion fatigue when doing advocacy work?
So that is a really, really important thing and a great question. One, your agencies should train on it. Two, you have to practice self-care. You have to, whatever that means for you. If it means you go for a run, if it means you take a bubble bath, if it means you just walk outside for 30 minutes at lunch. You cannot give from yourself if you are empty. And that's real. And it's you see it in first responders and in all attorneys that do work with populations who are harmed in any way by systems and institutions. And so I would say self-care, and then seek out training, seek out, if you need it and it's helpful, counseling. Almost every agency I'm aware of, especially if you happen to work for the government, have EAP programs, employee assistance programs, where they have to do this sort of stuff for free for their employees. But certainly as a public defender, we had regular trainings on compassion fatigue and how to take care of yourself, and try to bring that same energy to each case. One of my biggest mentors, she always said, the client that will need you the most might not even have been born yet. So don't lose that energy.
Yep, and to piggyback on that, burnout is real. So being able to recognize when you're burnt out, having what I call your squad, having your people, your support system, family, friends, etc., who are there for you. And also setting boundaries, because your job will work you to death. You've got to manage those boundaries. I'm going to respond to another question in the chat. I feel like lawyers get a bad rap for overworking, having a poor work-life balance, being frankly unhappy, etc. In your experience, has that been the case? Absolutely. I think the rap is well earned. You know, I waited 4 years after college to go to law school because I feel strongly that law school, it is 3 years of your life. It's a whole lot of money. You don't do it as a default. And a lot of people do. And so they end up getting in this field and they're not happy. They might not get a good job. They might have $300,000 in debt. And really? So I think if one wants to go to law school, one should really analyze that decision. Am I going to law school as a default? Why am I going to law school? Why do I want to be an attorney? How am I going to pay for it? Thinking about it strategically so that the chances are better that when you get out, you will have made a decision that makes sense with your life. Quite frankly, the statistics are staggering in terms of attorney drug abuse, in terms of attorney mental health issues, alcoholism, the pressures of the job, and again, the financial pressures because of all this debt. So, and in many of these legal environments, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. What I analogize practice to, sometimes it feels like I'm in finals every day. What do I mean by that? I mean that I come to work and I have to work at that level as if I'm in final exams. And I may come into the day thinking, okay, I have bio, Spanish, and a political science final. But I come into the job, it is actually 5 other finals. You don't know what the day is going to present you. but you've got to work at that level, and you have to have systems in place so that you can be healthy, and be happy. Does anyone else on the panel want to respond to that, or?
Can I add just a little something to that? Which is, I think it's important to recognize that at the beginning of your career, whatever your career is, there is a steep learning curve. So when I first became a public defender, it was 7 days a week, it was 10-hour days. But I also happened to be single and not have kids. So we would all work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then we'd go out and have a glass of wine and you have that community and you'd get together. Well, after a year and a half or 2 years of doing that kind of things, I got faster and more efficient at doing those things, so that when I was in trial, it was 24 hours a day and don't talk to me. And when I wasn't in trial, I had a much better balance. So, and it depends. As I have switched jobs and had to learn new things, I've had to go through that all over again. What I will say, private practice, I think, is, especially any kind of litigation, is really a grind, and it really takes a toll in terms of your time. One of the reasons I left my own firm, which we built, was because it was a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week thing in terms of responding to clients. If a client is paying you, they have this feeling that they can text you at 2 a.m. on Saturday and you should respond to them. And it's this weird sense of entitlement. But you do it because you're running a business and you're trying to keep it afloat. So also remember that whatever your best laid plans are, life may completely throw a curveball at you. So when I was in private practice, I decided I needed to get a divorce, which meant I was going to be the one doing primarily everything. And I just decided it wasn't sustainable. But what that led me to is a job that is super fulfilling and has a much better work-life balance. Majority of nights and weekends, I'm not spending working. You do have to go, and when you go hard, and you go hard all day, but at the end of the day, I can put it down. So that is, it is an important thing. And certainly something that came up that we should touch on is, for you all at this point in time, it is such an incredibly expensive proposition in relation to salaries and salary expectations and relation to cost of living. I mean, I have a 3-hour round trip commute for a reason. I don't want to live in a closet, and that's all I could afford to live in San Francisco. So those things are real, and I would encourage you to intern and shadow and go to places and see what it's really like before you make that kind of financial commitment. Because as Natalie is a testament to, you can help people, serve people, practice law, and change people's lives without going to law school. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that too. So you do hear a lot of things about lawyers working really hard. And first of all, I completely agree with Stephanie about the learning curve. Totally and completely true. Just for example, I don't think that it's exclusive to lawyers, though. My wife is a researcher at the University of Chicago. She works constantly. I mean, weekends, evenings, all the time. She works nonstop, and she does research in child and family social services, and she works all the time. So I don't think it's unique to lawyers that they work a lot. But I do think that it's very important, especially earlier in your career, to realize that you're going to be working a lot, pretty much in most jobs that you're going to do, especially as a young lawyer. And often as a young lawyer, the work that you are being asked to do is somewhat monotonous and doesn't seem like you are using the full scope of your abilities, your intellect, or maybe even fulfilling your ambition. There's something to the Karate Kid, paint the fence, wax on, wax off. that is absolutely true. As a lawyer, you go to law school for 3 years, you don't really get the skills you need to be a lawyer in law school. And so you do have to work doing sometimes things that you think might be beneath you for sometimes years before you get to do the really good stuff that you want to do. So you just have to be prepared to know that your career is a long road, and sometimes it takes zigs and zags, but that you do have to put in that time and grunt work early in your career in order to get where you want to be.
Ashil, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell like a quick story that one of the lawyers at the federal defenders told me that I think is kind of relevant. So I was on a big trial just before COVID hit. It was a 6-week trial, and we were actually defending this ex-CIA employee who allegedly leaked a bunch of documents to WikiLeaks. So it was like a super interesting case, but it was like a serious workload. Like for 4 to 5 weeks before the trial, and then during the trial, we were working like 15 to 17-hour days, would like go home, sleep for a couple hours, and then back to it. And I was tired, but I'm just like this 22-year-old kid who doesn't have like any responsibility other than to like feed myself. But I asked the lawyers, like, week 4 or 5, like, how do you guys do this? You guys have kids, you guys have like lives outside of this job. And what they told me, what I remember distinctly, one of them just told me that they were like, are you kidding me? I live for these kind of weeks where like I can just like do this work and like really just like fight for someone. So I also think if it's like something you're really passionate about and something you really love, even though like you'll be working your ass off, you'll be like enjoying it and like kind of like excited by it. So I think that's also something to keep in mind.
Thanks, Ashil. That's a good perspective. Let me go to another question. Is it beneficial to know what niche of the legal field you want to go into before you go to law school, or is it okay to go in undecided? I think it's not either. I think if one is going to go to law school, one should have some idea. I want to be a prosecutor. I want to be a defense attorney. I want to go into civil litigation. I want to do transactions. You should have some idea, and that idea may change in law school. But to just go with like kind of, law school, it's a professional training. It's not, to me, another liberal arts degree. I mean, if money's not an option, if time is not an option, sure, go for it. But if those things are, like they usually are, because now people are coming out with $300,000 in loans. That is $3,000 a month for like 30 years. And you haven't put food in mouth, key in car, key in house. That's a lot of money. And to figure out what you need to make to do that and then take care of your needs, you got to do some math. So I don't dissuade people from going to law school per se. I just really encourage them to think about it. And not to put too fine a point on it, I was a banker before I was a lawyer. And I thought I was going to come out with $50,000 in debt. I ended up coming out with $100,000 in debt. And I strategized. I made it a point. I went to a large law firm. I was making a lot of money. I made it a point to live beneath my means, save my money, pay off those loans, and be very responsible with my money. Because that money, it's golden keys or it's golden handcuffs. So something I would say to all of you now, and quite frankly, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So even if you're not, whatever job you have, you need to have financial literacy. You need to, your 401k plan, your IRA, your savings. How am I going to buy a house if I want a house? I recommend that you start understanding, basic financial literacy so you can plan for yourself financially. Understanding the stock market, Motley Fool, whatever. There are these tools. Because it's just a whole lot of money. And there's a whole lot of lawyers who are not happy and who are underemployed, and some who are unemployed. I'm gonna go to the next question, and I'll throw it. I'll throw it out to whoever would like to respond. What's something you wish you had done while at Vassar that would have better prepared you for law school and or working in the legal profession? Stephanie?
The only thing I could say is I wish that I had access to a legal clinic, maybe. It's kind of hard for undergrads, but in law school, we had every other Sunday at Fame Renaissance Church in South Central LA, the UCLA Law Clinic, where the students got to go, and we did all the interviews, and all the lawyers sat upstairs in a room with donuts, but they had lawyers who did real estate and criminal and landlord tenant so that people could come in with any problem. And I wish that I had access to something like that, because it really teaches you interviewing skills, and it teaches you how to ask the right questions and extract the right information that you need in order to even analyze a legal question. So for me, that was about the only thing, because law school doesn't even teach you how to be a lawyer. Law school teaches you how to go find what you need, and how to say what you need, and how to logically analyze things, and how to put facts and evidence in the framework of a statute or a whatever. But as with anything else, it's constantly changing. And so college, law school, all of it should be teaching you how to think, how to be logical, how to gather evidence, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Those are the things that will make you successful. But I do wish we had some form of clinic or place to shadow or place to volunteer to maybe get some of that experience.
Thank you. Natalie, can you add to that, please?
Sure. I already spoke a little bit about why I'm not super excited about going into the courtroom, even though it is something that in my current position I'm training for in a way. My current position would like me to be fully accredited, which would entail making appearances in front of the immigration court. I said in the last speaking thing, I'm not a huge fan of authority. We get around authority figures, I feel uncomfortable, especially with when there's authority plus ego, personality, and the hierarchy involved in the legal world. The few times I've been to immigration court made me sick to my stomach, because for a lot of people there, it's just they go there every day. So the judge is talking to the lawyers, and the clients don't even know what's going on. And I don't know, the whole thing to me is just really disrespectful. And I would not like going there every day. It would be really bad for my mental health. And I'll also just mention, just on a very personal note, this was something that I had thought that I wanted to do, was to be fully accredited. Now I just want to be partial. Part of that also is because I got into a really terrible car accident in 2017. I had a spinal cord injury. I was partially paralyzed for a little while. And that's when I decided that I didn't care about learning how to navigate those nasty spaces and have to deal with judges and the security and all the cult of personality and ego. I said, you know what, I'm gonna do work. I've been through enough. I've like almost like seen my own death or whatever. And I'm going to help support people who are doing that, write things for them, be on the legal team, represent clients outside of court, fight with agencies via letter. I love to get nasty in the documents. I need shade from that stupid person sitting across the courtroom. I'm sorry. Vassar didn't prepare me for any of that. Vassar doesn't prepare you, for how to deal with legal hierarchy, all the personalities, attorneys, and personalities and ego and things that go into representing people. And I think you do need to learn how to deal with all that in order to best represent your clients. I'm not sure what would help at Vassar for that. I don't know, debate team or something. I can just take guesses. I know some schools have like mock trials and things like that. But also, I guess, just paying attention to these issues in advance, starting to observe people's personalities. Ever since graduating, it's been one year after another, just observing people's personalities, meeting people that I'm like, wow, I thought these people only existed on TV. Like, no, that's a real personality type. Yeah. So yeah, just pay attention to people's personalities, start to get used to interacting with people that you don't really like or that, rub you the wrong way, because you have to, when in law, and probably in every other industry.
Natalie, thank you very much. Stephanie, did you want to say something?
Just wanted to add something real quick that I think is an important thing to start thinking about. And I'm sure it's not just the law, but it's very prevalent in the law even now. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So I can say it's gotten a little better. But the sexism, the implicit bias, the ableism, all of that is real. And I certainly did not learn at Vassar how to advocate for myself. Vassar is a very liberal arts woke place. It did not prepare me for being constantly mistaken for the court reporter, for being asked by the bailiff if I was the defendant's girlfriend, for being, for those types of things, for being automatically assumed when I walk into a room with my male partner that I am the receptionist, legal assistant, paralegal, anything other than a lawyer. So this conversation just brought that up for me. There's several public defenders, private attorneys, especially Black men, who are consistently asked if they are the defendant. So those types of things, just to kind of be aware of how to advocate for yourself. While, obviously you have to be a professional, you have to put on a face, but to be able to say, that is not okay. I have said to a judge, why every time do I speak to you, do you look at my male counterpart? And that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to say. But we did some serious battle my first year as a public defender, and we ended up to the point where we were so close, he presided over my wedding. You have to be willing to speak up for yourself in a professional way, and to call it out and to say, that's not okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Natalie, thank you for your points, because, something that I think is a strength of this panel is that, number one, you're seeing that you can be in the law without being a lawyer, and there's different ways to be a lawyer. In my, kind of advice to students that went with my bio, the first thing I put was, think about how your career will fit into your life. Now, I appreciate the fact that, you all are, you're 20. So, you might not be thinking about those concepts, but, one thing I really appreciate about Natalie's comments is that she is clear. She's clear about how her job fits into her life and what's important for her. She's not trying to status seek. She's not trying, she's clear. And that clarity is powerful. It's very powerful. So my recommendation, think about how your career will fit into your life. How much time do you want to spend working? What's important to you outside of work? And how does your life mesh with your career? Rural, urban, traditional family, travel, leisure, spiritual life. And, another thing I recommend is just write yourself a letter about your life and your career, basically considering the points I put in my advice to students. Seal it in an envelope and then revisit it every year or so and update it. Are you being true to who you are? Vassar's not going to teach you everything. No college could teach you everything. It's a great, strong, incredible foundation. Your relationships are very important, your squad, and knowing you're going to have growing pains. The initial question was about compassion fatigue. This work, it's hard work. And I would say whatever any of you do in your life, please find joy. Please try to find some joy, because that helps with all the other stuff. Sue, do we still have some time? Are we going to the breakout room?
We do have time, but if you'd like to conclude, I think that would be just fine, and I can set you all up.
Okay, so does anyone have any question that we can answer quickly? Does someone want to raise a hand and ask a question or put in the chat? Otherwise, I'll open it to the panel if there's anything in particular they'd like to close with. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. So
I would just close with one thing.
Michael, Stephanie was talking. Go on,
Oh,
Stephanie.
Sorry, I was just going to say the one thing that I didn't say that I said in the previous session, which is I think the key to life and the secret to everything is figure out what you love to do and get paid to do it. Achal was absolutely correct. Is even I had a 4-week long trial of a man who was looking at life in prison. He had never been arrested in his life. He also was a lawful permanent resident, but because of the charges he was looking at, he had an immigration hold on top of what I was doing. And during that 4-week trial, I've subsisted on Gatorade and coffee. I went for a haircut after, and my hairdresser said, "Where did all your hair go?" And I said, "Yeah, that's stress." But you know what? That was one of the best, most worthwhile fights I've ever had in my life. Because not only did we won so hard that when he got released to immigration, the judge released him on bond. And every year for, the next 5 years that I was in the office, he and his wife would show up annually with flowers, just to celebrate that thing. So when you love it, when you are passionate about it, even when you have no sleep and your hair's falling out from stress, you love it and you feel it and it stays with you forever.
Michael, you wanted to say something?
I would just say one other thing, which is this is a very broad subject, careers in the law. And you can, as you can see from this panel, you've got a very wide range of people who do a very wide range of things with their law degrees or in the law. So, you've got me on one end who's works at a hedge fund and a financial services firm. And then you've got people who work for nonprofits and people who work in criminal law and people who work in immigration. And, even within a particular law firm, if you were to go that path and go to law school and go work at a law firm, you've got people who sit in the first office who are, litigating securities law claims. Then in the office next to them, you have somebody who's working on preparing trusts and estates for their clients, writing wills and building trusts. And then the next person is working on ERISA, or labor issues or employment. And even within that law firm, you have an incredibly broad range of things that people do. And the day-to-day work that each of those people is doing is wildly different than what the person in the office next to them is doing. And so one mistake, I do think there was a question earlier about specialties. One mistake is thinking to oneself, I just want to get a job at a big law firm that I can make the most money that I can make. And I don't care if they stick me in the ERISA department because it doesn't matter to me. That's a huge, huge, huge mistake. And I think that it's a very 1980s, 1990s kind of mistake. I don't know that students these days would do that, although there is tremendous pressure for people who have a lot of student loans to just get a job where they can make a lot of money so they can pay off their loans. But I do think that it behooves everyone who's thinking about a career in the law to spend some time either talking to a bunch of different kinds of lawyers and maybe even trying to get an internship or a job, paid or unpaid, at a law firm to just kind of get a sense what it's like and what it means to do the actual work. Because as I think Stephanie said, what you learn in law school and what you do your first day on the job as a lawyer have very little to do with each other. Those two things are it's bizarre that they consider law school preparation for being a lawyer. So anyway, do your research, prepare, and talk to as many people as you possibly can. And I think it's great that you guys are all participating here because you are getting such a very wide view of some of the different things you can do. And even this is just a small set of what it means to be a lawyer. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And Sue, before we go to the break room, can Natalie just say something very quickly?
Oh, of course, take your time.
Okay.
I just wanted to say in terms of thinking about law school and things like that, because, you know, in my career in immigration legal services, there are obviously a lot of different ways in which just getting a law degree would open up even more doors for me in immigration legal services and help me serve more people more easily, transition between jobs easier, so on and so forth. So what's another reason why? I used to say this a lot. I mean, I just imagine myself a lot later in life. And I don't imagine myself as a lawyer because I have other dreams and aspirations that I would like to do as well, namely academic interests. I'm really passionate about legal services because I like to assist people through a complex system, but I've said a couple times today, I'm not actually that academically interested in law, you know, in terms of studying law. That's not, if I was going to invest a lot of money in higher education, which I'd like to do one day, that's not what I would like to spend 3 years studying. I'd like to study something else, continue more in some of the things I was studying at Vassar, things of that nature. So I never met somebody who wanted to become a doctor or a lawyer just to use that degree for part of their career or for a few years. And so that was another reason why I said, I'm not going to take this monumental leap into law when I've never really, I'm passionate about legal services because I'm passionate about serving. And I want in my life there always to be an aspect of service. But I also see myself going back to school for completely different things. Maybe keeping one foot in immigration legal services. I mentioned to my colleagues today, like a fantasy of mine would be to maybe get like my master's in Hispanic studies and be able to teach Spanish at like a community college or something. Engage in other community work, and then give my time a day or two a week to like a legal nonprofit or something. Always keep my knowledge in immigration legal services so that I'm always having one foot and being able to spend some of my time doing this advocacy and this legal work, but also pursue other academic interests and other interests I have in my life. And I think as long as I live within my means, as Lauren was saying, and, you know, like step carefully, I can have a modest, you know, I can career transition, I can keep up my knowledge, and I can have a life where I'm not locked into one career, and that I don't feel like I need to use the degree because I spent so much time getting it, so on and so forth. Anyways, if anyone has any questions about that kind of track, I'm here.
Thank you so much for that, Natalie. Time to break out, Sue?
Yes, it is. And before we do, let me thank everyone for being here. A special thanks to the mentors for the time and effort they've been giving Vassar this week. I'm so proud of Vassar, our alumni, the parents, our faculty, our students. This makes this community very special. I love seeing all the students, all your faces on the screen. When you're not here on campus, we miss you. So it's so wonderful to see you all.